The three basic resources in Dota 2 are gold, experience, and time, so naturally, we want as much of them as possible so we can win our Dota games. That's where Hand of Midas comes in, since it gives you 2 out of the 3. Hand of Midas is an item that grants you 30 attack speed passively, as well as an active ability that gives you gold and experience. It costs 2,050 gold to purchase the item, requiring a 500 gold Gloves of Haste and a 1,550 gold recipe. Every 100 seconds you can use the active that kills an enemy creep instantly, giving you 190 gold, about 1.9 gold per second, and the 2.5 times the experience of the creep you killed. So not only does Midas give you gold, it also increases your experience gain. Because that experience gain is based on the creep's experience, it's always recommended that you use Midas on a creep that gives the most experience. If we take a look at the chart, the best creeps to Midas by far are the largest neutral creeps, since Midas doesn't work against Ancients. The second best creeps to use it on are range creeps, siege creeps, alpha wolves, and hellbears. Anything else is sort of bad, but a few common neutrals would be better than a melee creep. When searching for a creep to Midas, keep in mind that every second Midas is off cooldown, you're losing 1.9 gold per second, and about 2 to 3 experience per second depending on what you use Midas on. The more experience you get, the more skill points, talent trees, and stats from leveling up. You want to maximize with Midas, but sometimes it's better to settle for a lane creep, since it might lead to you missing last hits in the lane when you walk into the jungle, thereby losing more gold and experience in the long run. So we know using Midas on neutrals is a good idea for experience, but to maximize the gold you get from Midas, it makes some sense to use it on the weakest neutral creep, because it always provides the same 190 gold, and you're turning an inexpensive creep into a large gold amount. However, in the early game it takes a long time to kill a large creep with regular attacks, and you want to maximize your experience gain anyways. Always use it on the biggest experience giving creep in your nearby area unless you're level 25. So we figured out who to use Midas on, and getting gold and increased experience gain is great, all heroes want that, but is it worth it to buy Midas? Unlike every other Dota item, Midas gives you an explicit return of gold despite being purchased with gold, so it's actually pretty straightforward to do some cost-benefit analysis. If it costs 2,050 gold to buy, yet it gives you 190 gold every 100 seconds for a gold gain of 1.9 per second or 114 gold per minute, that means for Midas to pay for itself, it takes about 18 minutes, if you use it right when it goes off cooldown. Every minute past 18 is free profit, and of course it also increases your experience gain along the way. So it's an item that pays for itself, levels you up to some strong talents and skills faster, and even gives some passive attack speed. The problem with Midas, however, is that purchasing it shifts your hero's power curve later in the game. To simplify, your hero sucks more for 18 minutes than it would normally. It's not just you underperforming this time. It's like going to a lane with only one set of tangos. It's an opportunity that your opponents can exploit to gain an advantage. For that 18 minutes, you're more likely to die in a fight, less likely to get a kill, and less able to initiate or escape with an item like Blink, Force, or Glimmer Cape. So to know if it's okay to fit Midas into your build, you need to know the strengths and weaknesses of your hero. If your hero is strong early but not late, it's probably better to buy an early game item that helps you enhance your strengths, like a Blink Dagger Online, Legion Commander, or Ursa. If you don't buy mobility on Legion Commander, for example, it's difficult to get duels off on enemy heroes, so you'll probably have less kills, advantage, and duel damage by the mid game if you pick up a Midas. And less kills on your opponents means that they won't lose as much gold as they would have if they died. Basically, if the hero needs an item to make their hero work, it's strongly recommended that you pick that item up first, or just skip the Midas altogether. It's also important to remember what Midas gives you passively. It may seem small, but if Midas gives you 30 attack speed and your hero heavily profits from attack speed, say if you have a bash skill or you do most of your damage from right clicking, then we can look at Midas as being less harsh on your power curve. We could argue that 500 of that 2050 gold purchase, the 30 attack speed, is actually important stats, meaning that Midas is paid off around 13 minutes into the game instead of 18. And yeah, you might get away with picking up the Midas and therefore guarantee better gold gain throughout the game, but that's more likely because your opponents are bad and don't punish your greediness than it was a good item choice, or they were just as greedy as you were. If you look at Dota Buff stats on Midases, you can see the most common hero to purchase Midas on is Invoker, because he does a lot of right-click damage early with Exhort Orbs, and because he really wants extra levels, because every level makes his spells better. Pretty much everything Midas gives you helps Invoker to be a better hero. Midas is great on Warlock because his hero is pretty survivable already due to his high strength gain, and he really wants levels in gold to make his ultimate more strong, and his level 10 talent gives him bonus experience gain, so that means that Midas gives him even more experience gain than it would have on a regular hero. It works well on Phoenix for similar reasons. Phoenix has some troubles farming normally because of long cooldowns on his basic skills, and getting additional points in your ultimate makes a big difference in how fast your egg might get killed by enemy heroes, which could completely change the team fight. You'll sometimes see pro players pick up Midas on heroes like Crystal Maiden and Ancient Apparition to accelerate their items and levels as well, but I'm not super sold on those ones, since that could be spent on a Glimmer or Force Staff, preventing them from dying in ganks and teamfights around 10 to 20 minutes. With that said, lots of supports now have plus damage talents that in many ways justify the Midas, since it's a source of 30 attack speed that, combined with plus damage, really increases your damage output. But past a small handful of heroes, there aren't a lot of times where buying Midas is a good idea. Looking at Dota buff stats, only 11 heroes have a positive win rate with the item, though that isn't entirely accurate because those stats only show games where a hero ended the game with a Midas. A lot of victories with Midas leads to the hero settling the item due to item slot issues, or in order to hit a power spike before an important fight. Carries especially should be careful about Midas purchases because carries are often weak in the early mid-game anyways, and picking up a Midas just makes that weakness continue for a little longer. So yeah, getting ahead even more is good, but there's lots of ways to do that. If you spend your first 4,000 luxury gold on an Orchid and use it to kill enemy heroes, every kill might as well be you using a Midas, not to mention the fact that your opponent dying loses them gold. That's kind of like a double Midas effect on the game. Or you could pick up a Shadowblade for 2,700 gold and use that to move around, killing the enemy supports trying to purchase a Midas. So the reality in Dota is that punishing or pressuring your opponents oftentimes gives you a huge advantage, especially below 5,000 MMR, since it will show weakness in strategies and most players don't know how to prevent that weakness. Active items that accomplish something are going to do that if you use them, and a Midas does not do that. It does help you get subsequent items more rapidly, but also delays when your action items will accomplish things. If you need an item to get things done and make your hero valuable, then Midas is probably not the item. So yeah, if your average game has a 20-minute laning stage with no map movement or ganks, Midas is a great pickup since it'll just increase your gold and experience gain. If you can get a Midas rapidly in lane without the need for regen items, survivability, or an early teamfight item, then by all means pick it up. If your opponents are good at ganking, have a dual lane against your safe lane, or will probably group up early and push, then buying a Midas can certainly be a liability, so be careful that the greed doesn't get to your head and lose you the game because your hero is too weak for 10 minutes in the early stage of the game. In the next video, we're going to cover Orchid. If you guys have any other suggestions for items that you don't understand and would like to get covered, leave the comments down below. Thanks for watching.